The news pumped out by the mainstream is merely a smokescreen to obscure what is really going on behind the scenes. And what goes on behind the scenes will tell you a lot about what you see happening in our nation's capital and why. An interesting email sent out over the weekend by one of the top globalist think tanks served as a great reminder of its work throughout the decades to build an international community at the expense of American liberty, independence, and sovereignty. We'll help you make these connections in this episode of Analysis Behind the News, where we provide the perspective and the plan to help restore American liberty and independence. America was founded with the individual in mind. The Declaration of Independence spelled out that men are created equal by God and given certain unalienable rights that are to be secured by government, getting their powers from the consent of the governed. The Bill of Rights of the Constitution also spells out some of the most important rights and how they are to be protected, while the 10th Amendment codifies that the powers not delegated to the federal government are to be kept by the states or the people. In contrast, globalism is geared with the collective in mind. Its goal is to use geopolitics to construct an international order governed by a world body. Elites push elected officials to create regional governmental bodies that siphon national sovereignty by allowing unaccountable bureaucracies to govern our communities. The European Union is a shining example. Our founders envisioned quite the opposite and suggested a foreign policy that was best for the budding nation. President George Washington said, "The great rule of conduct for us in regard to foreign nations is, in extending our commercial relations, to have with them as little political connection as possible." President Thomas Jefferson advocated, "I deem one of the essential principles of our government to be peace, commerce, and honest friendship with all nations, entangling alliances with none." He also said, "Commerce with all nations, alliance with none should be our motto." The Council on Foreign Relations, also known as the CFR, is the world's leading globalist organization. It publishes a journal called Foreign Affairs. An email it sent out on Sunday had the subject line, "The Backstory, How to Rule the World." One of the opening paragraphs reads, "Global governance has often been accused of not living up to its potential. Most of its proponents falsely assumed that the desirability of world order proves the attainability of world government, as Reinhold Niebuhr pointed out in 1949. The CFR has never been shy about advocating for world government or for changing the existing international order into a new world order. The CFR has been able to burrow into high places within the federal government, major media, think tanks, consulting firms, and non-governmental organizations for decades. The New American Magazine has published charts of the CFR's rising influence from 1929 to mid-2020. Just the influence within the presidential administrations throughout this time is quite astounding. The only time it faltered was during the presidency of Donald Trump. The Foreign Affairs email also mentioned another article from its archive, "The Hard Road to World Order" by Richard Gardner. Now, this is the same article the John Birch Society and the New American have pointed to repeatedly over the years as proof that the global elites were advocating for tearing down the sovereignty of individual countries. The now late Mr. Gardner wrote, "In short, the House of World Order will have to be built from the bottom up rather than from the top down. It will look like a great booming, buzzing confusion, to use William James's famous description of reality, but an end run around national sovereignty, eroding it piece by piece, will accomplish much more than the old-fashioned frontal assault. Of course, for political as well as administrative reasons, some of these specialized arrangements should be brought into an appropriate relationship with the central institutions of the UN system. But the main thing is that the essential functions be performed." Now, we place those words in bold to call your attention to them. Another article highlighted in the Foreign Affairs email is from 2014 called "The Unruled World, the Case for Good Enough Global Governance." In it, the author points to President Obama's suggestion of the world needing a new era of global institution building. It laments that the United Nations is in decline, but it points out that international cooperation is more of a multilateral sprawl that delivers a partial measure of international cooperation through a welter of informal arrangements and piecemeal approaches. This article elaborates a paragraph further in that global governance refers to the collective effort by sovereign states, international organizations, and other non-state actors to address common challenges and seize opportunities that transcend national frontiers. What we are seeing from President Biden and his administration is nothing short of a desperate attempt to jumpstart a global system of governance. Keep in mind, this is all at the expense of the American taxpayer, as well as American sovereignty, independence, and individual freedom. As we have seen during the COVID-19 hysteria, government of any stripe will not let a crisis go to waste. Those pushing for globalism do so knowing that American liberty and freedom will be supplanted for international interdependence. The cause or crisis of the day will take priority over your rights and liberties, whether it be climate change, social justice, racial equity, economic equality, crumbling infrastructure, or perhaps whatever the next respiratory virus will be. Perhaps the next crisis, of which we now seem to be in the beginning stages, could even be rampant inflation that helps to finally collapse the dollar, ushering in the excuse for a new worldwide digital currency. The globalists in Congress have done a great job of irresponsibly spending trillions of dollars, creating a wave of monetary supply, which is devaluing the dollar, causing prices to rise across the board, beginning with commodities. If you think the legislation is just a mere ramification of electing the ignorant, please think again. Global elites and their related think tanks have had an agenda of moving sovereign countries into entangling alliances, which creates interdependency, much like for those member nations in the European Union. The John Birch Society has advocated for Americanism over globalism since 1958. We are the only organization created to oppose the globalist agenda with an Americanist agenda. We use the tools and techniques our founding fathers gave us to protect the God-given rights of all Americans. Isn't it time for you to get involved? If not, what would it take? Join before it's too late. Many in your area may have already joined, as a wave of renewed interest in JBS is happening right now across the country. Links are in the video description. Who do you know that cares about freedom and independence? Because it's time to act. The very survival of our republic depends on it, and we thank you in advance for acting. I'm Bill Hahn for the John Birch Society. Until next time, stay informed, stay active, and be bold, patriots.